Hey, what's up, Spartan Nation? Welcome to another episode of the Spartan Nation Podcast here with your host, Matt Lonsberry, and my co host, Aiden McCrone. All right, Aiden, it is officially game week. We might have said that Sunday, but we are in game week. We've had a couple of days of press conferences with Mel Tucker. Courtney Hawkins spoke today. Got some players up on the podium as well. So it's finally here. We're just 3 days away from a Michigan State season opener against Central Michigan, and we're here to talk about it. So I guess we're gonna dive right into this because we do have a pretty loaded show today with a lot of stuff to get through. But we'll start with just kind of talking about the game in general a little bit here. Michigan State's 8-3 all time against Central Michigan. Those three losses coming in 1991, 1992, and most recently in 2009. Michigan State is a 14-point favorite according to Caesars Sportsbook, and the over/under for total points is 45. So I guess I'll start with the point spread there, Aiden. How do you feel about that 14-point spread, and do you think that's appropriate for this game? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit appropriate. Obviously, MSU, underperformed last season, and Central was also didn't make a bowl game, wasn't that good last year as well. So I think 14 is fair for week one with a lot of uncertainty for both teams, kind of coming off underwhelming seasons, and yeah, like I said, it's week one, and obviously there is a two score spread there, so it still is MSU should win comfortably by Vegas odds.
Yeah, I think every season, most teams come in with some unknowns. Like you don't know how certain factors, especially in Michigan State's case with a new starting quarterback and the season that they had last year. Central Michigan was like a middle of the road MAC team last year, so it's kind of tough in early on when we haven't seen teams play yet to really have an idea about those point spreads. But I think it's about right, like you said, two scores, um, and we just got to see how Michigan State performs in this game against a team that they ought to handle. This is a team that is looking to bounce back again from last year, and you got to put your best foot forward and get off to a good start with this first season opener here. So with that, that's kind of like the general intro to the game. We've got different categories that we're going to talk about throughout today's show, just kind of give you an idea of what the layout's going to be. We're going to do burning questions, which is we're each going to give 5 questions we have about the game or about the season, and we'll kind of feed off of each other with that and go back and forth. We're going to preview the best Big Ten game of the week and the worst Big Ten game of the week, in our opinion. We'll do some over/under, which is some prop bets on individual statistics and things like that for the Michigan State Central Michigan game. And then we'll spend a little bit of time talking about the best games around the country, and we'll finish up with our predictions for the Michigan State and Central Michigan game. And so with that, Aiden, let's get right into burning questions, and we'll start with the question that everybody wants to know: who is going to be Michigan State starting quarterback this year? So, Aiden, we are 3 days away. Give us your best guess. Who's going to be the guy who trots out there for Michigan State to start the year?
Ooh, I mean, that's tough. That's tough. I think it feels almost like Noah Kim and Caden Hauser have shown that they have a good relationship, but the more you see that they have a good relationship, it feels like the more polarizing the fan base gets with who should be the starter, which is kind of funny to me. But I think it's gonna be Kim trotting out there to take the first snap. So I wouldn't be surprised either way. I'm sure all the fans are hoping that MSU wins the toss and takes the
Yeah.
ball, just so they get it out of the way. So I think Noah Kim is going to be the starter to begin with, and I believe that. I think obviously Mel said at media day it's the 3 quarterback race with Sam Leavitt, but I think it's coming down to 2 guys right now, and yeah, that's really all I have to say. It's just kind of wait until Friday to get the answer.
Yeah, no, I think when at Big Ten Media Days, when Mel says it's a three-man race and he's talking about Sam, that's kind of a diplomatic answer, but I think we all know that this has been a two-man race ever since Peyton Thorne hit the transfer portal back in late April. I'm kind of with you. I'm not that I have a strong inclination one way or the other, but maybe because of that, I am leaning towards Noah Kim. But it's a razor thin margin, maybe like 52-48 type of deal. I wouldn't be stunned to see Katen Hauser trot out there first, but I do think it's going to be Noah Kim. Um, and again, based on what we saw last year, if it is in fact Kim, I'm excited to see what he's able to do in that starting role and putting a full game's worth of production together, just because he was very good in the limited role that he had last year. So, yeah, we're in agreement on that. So I'll pass the ball to you, and you give me your first burning question of the night.
Yeah, so I think it's a burning question that will be answered kind of throughout the season. But my first question kind of relates to this about running the football and just kind of where is Malik Carr going to line up? I think we're going to see that Ted Gilmore, the tight ends coach, talked a lot about his growth and how much better he's gotten. Where are we going to see him line up? Are we going to see him line up out wide in the slot more often now? Are we going to see him be on the line and they're going to attempt to run the ball a lot more with him? I think, just improving the running game, that's huge. So I think that's where where on the field are we going to see him positioned up? And I think it's not serious, like a big burning question for a lot of people, but I think it is a question to ask because he's a player that is going to play a key role just in the passing and the run game.
Yeah, no, I think it is an interesting question because it's not one that I've really thought about a whole lot this fall camp. But yeah, you're right. He's a guy who is a mismatch for most defenders who line up across from him. So I
Mhm.
think you can move him around a lot. You can move him to the slot. You can have him in line and have that dual threat of either he's run blocking or slipping out and for a pattern. So yeah, I think what we see from Carr in that department will kind of give a little bit of an insight to where Jay Johnson's mindset is as a play caller and the identity that Michigan State wants to establish this year. I think they are going to try to pound the rock a little bit more this year and rely on that run game, especially with a new quarterback, especially with um, a receiving core that Courtney Hawkins talked about being a deep group, but I don't know that true number one guy like a Keon Coleman, like a Jaden Reed. I like Trey Mosley a lot, but I've got to see him be that number one guy before I just kind of anoint him that number one guy. So I think it'll be interesting to see where Malik lines up and how that uh, shows the mindset a little bit with Jay Johnson. Do you think that's part of that too? Is seeing wherever he lines up will be kind of an indicator on where Jay Johnson's head is at?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jay Johnson, he's said the tight end is like the MVP of the offense, or kind of the weapon that he wants to utilize more. So that's he wants to be that way, but the question is, is it going to be Carr, or is it going to be Carr and then somebody else, like Tiny Hopper, or somebody like you know Mike Masunis, or some other tight end that we may not know about yet.
Yeah, I gotcha. Just a quick note to those who are watching. I see your questions coming in. I'm starring those questions, and we at the end of the show we'll get to those. So if you want to keep throwing those questions in, go ahead. But we're going to kind of keep things rolling here because we've got a lot to get to. But we do appreciate questions. All right. So my next burning question is, how healthy is the defensive line? Because this is something that we heard about going way back to spring was the reason why Michigan State couldn't have a spring game, was that they had some bangs and bruises up front with the defensive line. We know that there's been an emphasis this offseason on getting guys to the game and not beating them up in fall camp and beating them up in summer conditioning and then having them less than 100% as game starts. So Where do you think the health of the defensive line is with guys like Tunmis Adedele and Chris Bogle's a big one who was hurt for most of last year, but we expected to be an impact player this year. Where do you think that's at right now?
Yeah, I mean, I would expect them to be about as 100% as 100% can be after a fall camp. I mean, obviously, once you start hitting, I know MSU has, started monitoring how their contact practices are and kind of not bringing guys to the ground and everything like that. So kind of figuring that out so they're as 100% as they can be. And then, once the season starts, obviously after that first game, I know, nobody's pretty much 100% for the rest of the season. So,
Sure.
I expect them to be fully healthy. I don't expect any of those guys to really have any snap limitations or snap limited amount of snap counts for the Central game at least. And I think they're going to rotate a lot of those guys on the D line. I think we've talked about how much depth they've added this season, and I think D line there's been a lot of added depth through, guys getting healthy, adding players from the transfer portal, and just incoming freshmen. I think there's a lot of freshmen that are coming in that, really want to play. And I think there may be one or two guys that are ready to play. So I think we'll see that on Friday night as well.
Yeah, no, I think they have a good amount of depth at defensive tackle, especially. Like, I'm not concerned with that position group. Edge is not it's not weak by any or lacking depth by any stretch, but I think there's a little bit more to prove there just because we haven't seen Tunmis Adedele in a Spartan uniform before. Chris Bogle, like I said, he started off pretty well last year, but really didn't get to see much of him either. Zion Young is a guy who came along and did some good things as a freshman last year, but again, he's got to take another step as a second-year guy. There's a lot of buzz around him, so interested to see what the defensive line, the edge especially, looks like against Central. All right, hit me with your second burning question.
All right, my second burning question is who are the starting corners are going to be? I think for that, I think it's kind of comes down to who are the two guys that are going to emerge out of the group of corners that are there, because I'm not really convinced that any guy up from last season, I don't really think that any of those guys who played last year are gonna, have their spot solidified. I think everyone, including, Charles Brantley, is up for position competition. I think, adding Jim Salgado, the new cornerbacks coach, obviously gives a clean slate for all these guys. I think Dylan Tatum has really emerged as someone who people think will be a starting corner as do I. So I think it's going to be, is he the number one corner? Is he the number two guy? And then who's going to be beside him, as well as, who's going to make the rotation, as well as potential moves to nickelback as well.
Right. No, that is an interesting question because, like I said, Charles Brantley's been kind of that guy penciled in at the QB1 or CB1 spot. Mm-hmm. And one of those questions has been, okay, who's gonna line up opposite him? I think I would lean towards Dylan Tatum at this point, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Marquis Lowry out there if he's healthy. He's a guy who missed a lot of last year, again, due to injury, and that was a theme for Michigan State last year. But I think those two guys are probably competing pretty closely for that second corner spot. And then at nickel, I think Angelo Gross really found a home there. And maybe that's his best route, kind of a safety corner hybrid, and nickel is a good spot for a guy like him. So I think that's what you'll see out there. Maybe the first series is Brantley, Tatum, and or Lowry, and then Angelo Gross, barring injury. Like, obviously this it's been very tight-lipped coming out of Michigan State this week, just with game prep and all that. So based on what we know now, that's kind of what I expect. Moving on to my number 3 burning question. Who steps up alongside Trey Mosley as the second wide receiver? And I'm looking for one name here that just jumps out to you, Aiden.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I would say my instinct wants to say Montori Foster. I think
Okay.
that's a name who's really emerged as of late, within the last kind of few weeks. But I wouldn't discount any of the sophomores, specifically Tyrell Henry, Jerron Glover, and also Antonio Gates Jr. So I think all of those guys, including other receivers like Christian Fitzpatrick, I think all 4 or 5 of those guys have an opportunity, especially Friday. I think they're going to try to get a lot of guys in, not only Friday but against Richmond as well. So I think that's something that we can look forward to. Alante Brown as well.
Yeah, no, I think just based on what we've seen, or just some of the breadcrumbs we've gotten in fall camp, we did get to talk to Montori Foster during fall camp, and in some of the highlight videos that we saw from the scrimmages, he's going up and making a big catch, a high point in the football. So I think with, again, those breadcrumbs kind of indicate that, yeah, you might be on the right track there with Foster. Just to be different, I'll go Alante Brown as my guy, and this is kind of a development that, not that I didn't anticipate it, but he was on my radar, but not maybe the number one option. But nothing but good things. We've heard nothing but good things since he's transferred there. Courtney Hawkins today at media availability was highly complimentary of him. Trey Mosley spoke to the media today too, and the same thing there. He says that they've become friends, and I think they were both recruited in the same cycle to Michigan State. Alante Brown originally committed to Michigan State before ended up at Nebraska. So yeah, he would be a guy who I think that might be your trio of starting wide receivers. If I had to put money down, it would be Trey Mosley, Montori Foster, and Alante Brown. All right, Aiden, hit me with your next sprinting question.
All right, I think this is going to be not really a surprise, but a question that we've heard a lot is just, what's the kicking game going to look like? I think,
Okay.
Obviously, a lot of people in here have questioned about the kicker pretty much every episode. So it looks like it's going to be Jonathan Kim, but how well is he going to perform? I think, can we trust him to make some of those longer kicks that, maybe Coach Tucker or the special teams coach Ross Ells didn't really trust as much last year. So I think that's going to be a question that we can see answered within the first 2 weeks. I expect more touchdowns than field goals, but
Sure.
we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, no, this is another thing. I mean, Tucker was asked about the kicking game on Monday, and like the quarterback situation, he was pretty mum on naming a starter. Illis Eggplant, I'm not sure. Are you referring to Jonathan
Kim is
Kim?
a transfer from
Yeah.
North Carolina.
Yeah, no, transfer kicker from North Carolina is Jonathan Kim. Big leg. Not sure about his accuracy because I think he only did was kickoffs for the Tar Heels last year. So accuracy is going to be what it comes down to there. And then at punter, I think I would probably lean towards Michael O'Shaughnessy, just because he's an older guy, several years at Ohio State before transferring to Michigan State. He's battling out with Ryan Eckley, who's a redshirt freshman, for that number one punter job. So again, no inside information, just because it's been pretty quiet, even about the special teams. You would think revealing who your punter is wouldn't have too big of an impact on game prep, but I guess that's where we're at here. So yeah, so I'll go O'Shaughnessy and Jonathan Kim for now as to answer that question, but we won't have an idea until maybe we won't. Hey, here's an idea. What if Michigan State doesn't have to punt against Central Michigan? Then we still won't know who the starting punter is. So
yeah, true.
All right, I'll move on to my forwarding question. I think I probably know the answer to this one, but I'll go with it anyway. Does Darius Snow dress for the game against Central? And I'm not saying play, just is he in pads? Is he in pads, shoulder pad? Does he have his helmet with him? Does he dress?
I'm gonna say yes on this. I think
Okay.
I think he does dress for that.
All right. I'm surprised by the answer, to be honest. This isn't anything more than what my gut tells me. I don't think he'll dress. I think I think Michigan State is probably kind of trying to bring him along slowly, but I could be totally wrong about that. So it is interesting that we have different opinions. Why do you think he'll dress, Aiden?
Um, I don't know. I have a gut feeling. I think just the fact that they've played their cards pretty close.
Okay.
Obviously that injury happened the first game last season, so I think a full calendar year. I think that might be something. I mean, I could see him dressing and not playing just to have him out there kind of suited up just to throw them off. I know that's a big thing where, sometimes you still have guys dress just so the other team, makes extra time to prep for anything possible.
Yeah, the interesting thing too is that the Big Ten just initiated a week or so before the season. They initiate this injury report rule where every Big Ten team has to report who is available and who's not 2 hours before kickoff, and so that might change some things too. Maybe you dress him just to keep him off of that report. I'm not sure. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of factors in going forward. But um, the real answer is Aiden's an optimist and I'm a pessimist. That's the real answer to why we differed on this one. All right, hit me with your next burning question.
All right, my next burning question is gonna be what is the run game look like? I think how effective is the run game gonna be? Just looking at it, can they dominate in the trenches for the next two games? I know obviously last season, Jalen Berger came out and ran for I think 130 some odd yards and two touchdowns against Western. Can they do that again? And then obviously that's going to be week to week. Can they keep that consistency and maintain that strong offensive line and keeping all those guys healthy? Obviously, that's going to be a burning question. And obviously, I think another question. I haven't seen all of your questions, but you might have one of who's the running back that's going to be trot out there to take that first snap as well.
Yeah, no, that is a good question. I would lean towards Nathan Carter. I won't get into like specific numbers because this does get into my over unders a little bit later, but I do think we're
Mhm.
going to see an improved running effort out of Michigan State on Saturday. Now, does that translate to Big Ten play? Does that translate against Washington? That's to be determined. But I think against a team that you're expected to go out and kind of physically dominate, I think they are going to want to establish that culture and that identity of being able to pound the rock. And so I do think you're going to see an emphasis on it. Um, so no, that's certainly that's one of the things I'll be watching most closely is how effective is Michigan State in the run game? What's their yards per carry? What kind of push are they getting up front? So yeah, that's a good one. Any other final thoughts on the running game?
No, I mean, I think the first drive, I think Berger will be the starter, but obviously we'll see who takes the majority of the carries because that can change. So I think Berger starts just because he came last year, but I can see Carter getting majority of the carries after that.
Yeah, no, I just to answer Eggplant's question, I do think this is where you see Jaron Mangum a lot, and I think the other guys too could be used in short yardage. That's
Mhm.
kind of interesting. We've kind of assumed, or I've at least have kind of assumed that Jaron Mangum's going to be your short yardage back, but I'm interested to see like last year with Elijah Collins, it was kind of like a field position thing where a different guy based on where Michigan State was at the field, and so maybe that's something that they carry into the season too. I would expect Jaron Mangum just because we even saw it just in the limited amount of scrimmage reps that we got in the spring game. The dude just he's a load. He's tough to bring down, so I kind of lean towards him with the short yardage situations. Um, all right, so I'm going to give you my final burning question, and it has to do with a couple of true freshmen. So, how much playing time and in what capacity, what areas are we going to see By Job and Jordan Hall in the season opener against Central. How are they going to be utilized?
That's a tough one. I think Jordan Hall can be used in a lot of different ways. I think
Okay.
he, in terms of the most college ready freshman, he'd probably be number one on my list for just MSU players. And then I think By Job is probably up there. He might be number two for me. So I think Jordan Hall will get more snaps, but I think either way, both of those guys will play just throughout this season. I don't see either of them, redshirting. I think they'll play, even at the minimum, they could be special teams guys. And I think Jordan Hall will play more than By Job to on Friday.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you. I think Jordan Hall is going to be part of that rotation at linebacker. I'm interested to see maybe on like obvious passing downs if By Job gets in there on the edge, and if Hall is maybe one of those passing down linebackers, maybe his athleticism and a little bit more, maybe a little bit more versatile. We haven't seen it yet, but a bettering pass coverage, that's still a concern that I have about this team is how well the linebackers can perform in pass coverage, and so. Interested to see how they mix guys in those obvious, third and long situations. But yeah, I think you nailed it with special teams. I think we're going to see both of these guys in some capacity on special teams, whether it be kick coverage or punt coverage or something like that. And I'm interested. It's funny, ESPN out their preseason Big Ten Freshman of the Year pick, and it was By Job. I think of the two big name Michigan State true freshmen, if I had to make that choice, I think I would go with Jordan Hall just because I think he's going to get on the field more than By Job. So, but definitely excited to see both those guys. All right, finish this out, Aiden. What's your last burning question?
All right, my last burning question kind of relates to that again. Is who's going to be the rotation of linebackers and what's that going to look like? Kind of with and without some players like Darius Snow, also Jacoby Windman. Where is he gonna? Can he play on? Is he gonna play on the edge some? We know we saw that last season. There's a lot of depth at linebacker, arguably their deepest position. So, what do we see with that? Where are they going to utilize those guys? I mean, they got some big players. I mean, Jordan Hall is pretty big. Along with some of their other guys that maybe they could use them as edge rushers as well. I know, like I just said, Jacoby Windman was one last season. So just kind of what's that rotation going to look like? Is, Cal Halliday and Windman just going to get pretty much majority of the snaps until it's, a blowout and then they throw in the rest of those guys, or are we going to see Aaron Brule and some other linebackers more often?
Yeah, no, I do think we're going to again rotating and playing for situations. I think that's one of the things that Scotty Hazelton needs to do well this year is get the right guys on the field at the right time, the right situations that give you the best chance for success, because we've seen this for several years now, like just a lack of an ability to get off the field on third down. Some of that's pass rush, some of that's poor coverage in the back end. We both like Michigan State's depth at defensive on the defensive side of the ball, especially in the front seven. There are some questions at safety, and corner is still needs to be sorted out a little bit. But again, if you get in those third and long situations, you got to be able to get off the field. So definitely interested to see like what that number looks like for Central at the end of the game. Were they 3 for 10 on third down? Were they 6 of 10 on third down? It's a big factor. So. All right, with that, wrap up our burning questions segment, and let's answer a couple fan questions. This is a good time for that. I'm gonna go back to the top. Drew asked right at the beginning of the show. Drew, I see your question. I appreciate it. We're gonna get into this at the end of the show when we do our score predictions, so we won't answer this just yet. And so let's see. Let's go to Carlos. It's talking about Central Michigan's defense and how it's better than the offense. What's the possibility of Michigan State's defense scoring a touchdown in the season opener? What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely possible. It's really got to come down to just how are they going to affect the pass, the passing game. I think, we saw last year against Western, uh, when everyone's healthy, they got a lot of sacks, and it was pretty effective against a team that, is it like you said, it was like a middle of the road MAC team. So how can they affect, the quarterback for Central? I think, getting sacks, creating fumbles. I think they're going to create some turnovers. I'll get to that in our prop bets, but
Okay.
yeah, I think if they turn some of those turnovers to touchdowns, that would be huge.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I ever expect going into a game a defensive touchdown. Sometimes, bold prediction. That segment or something. I'll throw that out there, but it's a tough thing to do. So, but again, this is an opponent that you expect exciting highlight plays, and so maybe we'll see one on Saturday. This one from Carrie Ellis. Just your thoughts on Angelo Gross in that nickel spot, because this is what this question was about. I do think he found a home there. I think he struggled. He struggled at safety, whether it be the right assignment, whether it be in pass coverage, things like that. I don't see him as a true corner. I do think nickel is a good spot for him where he can use athleticism. So I like Angelo Gross at nickel this year. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think he definitely helps the run game just because he's a more downhill type of player. So he's a lot more downhill. So he can really affect the run game at nickel as opposed, safety's a little out further. And like you said, in coverage, he struggled a little bit. So I think with being inside and kind of having more of an inside role in coverage where he doesn't have to cover as much room as he would at safety, I think that benefits him more, and that really makes him effective. And again, it's about kind of getting your best 11 guys on the field, and he's definitely one of the best 11 tacklers on the team. And they switched. Darius Snow was originally there in 2021,
Yeah.
and he converted to a linebacker because they wanted a little bit more speed. So I think Angelo Gross is a good transition from Snow to Gross at nickel.
All right, last one here, and then we'll move on to our next segment. But it comes from our buddy Cameron. Will they throw the tight ends more this year? I think we're going to see Malik Carr featured pretty heavily in the offense. He's been one of the guys that the coaching staff, multiple different guys, Ted Gilmore obviously is the tight ends coach, but Jay Johnson singled out Malik Carr. Chris Kapilovich, he talked about Malik Carr and just the improvements that he's made as a run blocker, which is going to get him on the field more often. And I think because he'll be on the field more often, you're going to see him make a bigger impact in the passing game than we've seen the last couple of years from any of the tight ends, really, since Connor Hayward, really, in 2021. So I think that's why it comes down to, is it just lip service about the run blocking, or is Malik really taking a step there? I tend to believe he has. It just the amount of different guys who've talked about it. So interested to see what that looks like. And the second point I would make is the wide receiver room is a little bit unproven. So you are going to need some more help from the tight ends, specifically Malik Carr in the passing game. So yeah, I see a much bigger role for the tight ends in the offense this year.
Yeah, like you said about the wide receivers being unproven, I think that Malik Carr is a huge target. So whether it's Kim or Hauser, I think they're going to be looking for him in the passing game just because he's a large target. He's easy to find. And again, like you said, it takes time to build that trust with some of those younger guys and players who haven't really played as much. So with his experience, he's probably he is the second most experienced pass catcher on the team besides Trey Mosley. So
yeah,
he should be utilized a lot.
All right, appreciate those questions. We're going to move on to the next segment, and we're calling it Big Game, Big Lame. And that's because we're going to point out the biggest or the best Big Ten game of the week, and then we're going to point out the weakest Big Ten game of the week. And so this is what I came up with this week. honestly, it's not a banner week for the Big Ten. There's not like that game that just jumps out at you right away. But I'm interested in um, Minnesota is a 7-point favorite against Nebraska this week, and it's coaching day for Matt Rule. After Scott Frost was just a disaster in Lincoln the last 3 or 4 years, whatever it was, he was there. Got fired after 3 games last year, so that's kind of the one that jumps out to me as the most intriguing this year is Minnesota, Nebraska. Minnesota's replacing a new starting quarterback. They're replacing their stud running back Mo Ibrahim. So that one jumps out to me. It's a 7-point. Minnesota's a 7-point favorite. What are your thoughts on this game, Aiden? And give us a pick against the spread.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of expect Minnesota to come and kind of make it a little bit of a blowout. Honestly, I think
this is your Big Ten West champion. Yes.
Yeah, so I really expect Minnesota to come out. I'm not a huge believer in Nebraska. I think, when we made our national picks, I did buy into the Texas Kool-Aid or started drinking the Texas Kool-Aid, but Nebraska is another kind of national brand that I'm not going to buy into at all. So I think I'm on the flip side, and I think Minnesota will cover the 7 or 7.5 points that's being laid down right now.
All right. That's interesting. I'm not sure what to expect from Minnesota this year. I like PJ Fleck. Maybe that's because I'm a Kalamazoo native and he was at Western Michigan and he led them to a 12-0 record there. So, I do have a little bit of a bias towards PJ Fleck for that reason. With that said, I think I'm going to take Minnesota to win the game, but I'm taking Nebraska in the points. I'm picking the Cornhuskers to cover here. I think there's going to be a lot of excitement from that club. Again, new energy, new head coach. This could bite me in the backside, and you could be on whenever we do our post game show next week after Michigan State and Central. You might, what were you thinking, man? But it's a gut feeling. I'm going to take Nebraska to cover the spread on this one, but I'll pick Minnesota to win. All right, and that leads us to our big lame, which is the worst Big Ten game of the week. And there's a couple different options here, but I had to go with the FCS Big Ten matchup, and that's Towson at Maryland. I couldn't even find a spread for this game. Maryland hosting. Where is Towson? Do you know where Towson's at?
I want to say it's in Missouri.
Okay, if anybody in the comments knows where Towson is at, let us know, because I have no idea where they're at, and this is definitely the worst game of the week.
Wait, no, sorry, it's in Maryland. It
is in Maryland. Okay,
yeah.
So at least I guess it's a regional thing. It's kind of, I don't think it's similar to playing like one of the directional schools or anything like that. It's a lower level. It'd be like playing Northern Michigan, Does Northern Michigan even have a football program? I don't even know.
Yeah, they do.
They do? Cool. Awesome. It'd be like playing them. So no kudos to Maryland this week for hosting Towson. We're not going to find out a whole lot about the Terrapins. I do think they have a pretty solid team this year, and Mike Loxley's kind of spoke glowingly about wanting to compete in the Big Ten East. I don't think they're going to do that. I just don't think they have the horses to compete with the Big Three in the Big Ten East, but I do think they're a solid program. I am kind of looking forward to seeing how they match up with Michigan State, down the line. Just some other notables in the Big Ten this week. As far as big lame, Michigan, East Carolina is definitely in the big lame category. That game's gonna be on Peacock. That game belongs on Peacock, actually. Like as much as I've given Peacock a really hard time about putting Michigan State, Washington on there and Michigan State, Iowa, I don't think those games deserve to be on Peacock. Michigan, ECU, that deserves to be on Peacock. We got Ohio State at Indiana. Ohio State's a 30-point favorite at Indiana, so I can't call that big lame because it's a conference game. In fact, I think there's a little bit more intrigue just because, again, week 1 conference game, so interesting there. Fresno State at Purdue is kind of competed with Minnesota and Nebraska for that top spot just because it's only a 3.5 point spread. Purdue's favored by 3.5 at home against Snow. So might keep an eye on that game. West Virginia Penn State is an old regional rivalry that hasn't been played in a long time because obviously Penn State's in the Big Ten. They don't play uh, those 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 teams over in the Appalachians very often anymore. Pitt used to be a regular for Penn State. West Virginia was a regular. So it's just intriguing to see an old rivalry renewed, but West Virginia is not very good. And then finally, Northwestern at Rutgers, another conference game. Rutgers favored by 6.5. I'm just interested to see. That's probably not the right thing. I was going to say interested to see what Northwestern's looks like. I'm just wondering if it is going to be just a dumpster fire now that your coach is fired a month or so before the season. They bring an interim guy who's expected to be defensive coordinator. Now he's leading the program in his first year on the job. So yeah, Rutgers is favored by 6.5 over Northwestern. That kind of shows you where what the projection of Northwestern season is going to be. So that's kind of a look at the Big Ten as a whole. Any thoughts on any of those other games? I didn't let you speak about Towson and Maryland a whole lot,
No,
but
that's
any thoughts on
fine.
the
That's
rest of the Big Ten schedule?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two conference games, obviously Indiana, Ohio State. I mean, it's at Indiana, which is a little interesting. I know they played a Thursday night game against Ohio State week 1, I think like 5 or 6 years ago, and that was like the first sold out crowd for Indiana in years. I don't think it's going to be sold out this year, but it might be sold out by Ohio State fans, but it's not going to be sold out
Yeah,
by Indiana fans.
yeah,
And
it's
then
not too
yeah,
long of a drive from Columbus to Bloomington, so
right. And then
go ahead.
I think the Rutgers Northwestern game, I think it is a bit intriguing just to see how Northwestern kind of reacts or kind of just showing what has gone on the last couple of months.
Yeah.
Just seeing how that's really impacted the team and kind of moving forward. I would pick Rutgers to cover the spread of 6.5 right now. So I think it's just kind of a matter of how much of a fight is Northwestern going to put up, and obviously there's a lot of non-football questions that are still going to be looming around that program for the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think I would lean Rutgers covering the spread in that one. Kerry Ellis is calling his shot. He's saying 0-12 for Northwestern this year. So we will keep we're going to make note of that, Kerry, and come back to that at the end of the year and see if you. I mean, it's hard to bet against that. I don't know who their non-conference games are against. They probably play a couple of
Yeah,
smaller
they play some
programs.
easy ones.
So, but
So
I mean, they were 1-11 last year, and their only win was Nebraska. So they lost all 3 of their non-conference games last year. So you might not be wrong about that one. All right, let's move on to our next segment. We're going to bring it back to Michigan State and Central Michigan with this next segment. It's called Over Under, and pretty much we're just going to provide some prop bets that we made up and give our thoughts and kind of make a pick on those. So I'll go ahead and start with this one. Michigan State starting quarterback, whoever that is. I'm not going to name them. We both said we're leaning Kim, but not sure. But Michigan State's starting quarterback, over or under 1.5 touchdowns, passing touchdowns.
I'm gonna take the under on that.
Okay.
To be honest, so I think that's gonna be. I think it's gonna be a lot of running the ball. I think MSU, no matter what, is gonna have a lot of I think they're gonna run the ball a lot. I think they don't want to show that as much, but we'll see. I think we can see some big throws by Kim or Hauser, whoever it is, but I think if they get in the red zone, they're running the ball.
Yeah, you guys go ahead and play along in the comment section with your picks, and we won't react to them, but we'll at least put them on screen here for people to see. But I'm with you on this. I'm going to go under for passing touchdowns, and a lot of the same reasons that you listed. I mentioned it before. I think Michigan State's going to want to establish that run game. I think they want to prove that they have improved in that area and can be a smash mouth football team. We've heard that from JD Duplain at Big Ten Media Days. We heard it from Mel Tucker just a couple weeks ago about how they need to run the ball better and more effectively. So I'm with you. I think I will say one passing touchdown, but I don't know that they reach that whoever starts gets to that second one. So yeah, we're both in agreement there. Give me your first over under.
Oh, I'm going to say I'll say Malik Spencer tackles over under 7.5.
Oh, that's interesting. I wasn't expecting that at all. Week one, kind of figured, some softball ones, but that's tough.
Yeah.
So we expect Malik Spencer to start at strong safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So he could be down in the box a little bit more. This kind of plays into one of my questions later. 7.5. I'll go under. I think he gets to 7. So I'll say under. He will be he'll be one of those guys that you look at the box score at the end of the game. He's going to be up there, but I'm going to say under 7 or under 7.5.
All right. I think for the sake of the argument, I'll take the over.
Okay.
I think he gets a lot of those open field tackles. I think if MSU really decides if they really establish that edge and that D line really establishes the line of scrimmage, I think they're gonna try to work it outside, and I think that's gonna allow him to get a lot of tackles in the second half.
Okay. So 7.5. I should write yours down here too, and then we might be able to. I don't know if we'll revisit them in a show, but 7.5 tackles. All right, I'll give you my next one while I'm kind of writing here. So my second over under. You don't have to give me a specific because we're going to do score prediction at the end of the show, but I'm going to set Central Michigan over under point total 13.5. Aiden, what do you got?
13.5. I'm gonna have to take the over on that. I think I'll take the over. I think MSU has, every year week one, I think, there are some good and bad takeaways, but I do think they always give up a touchdown or, a couple touchdowns in week one. So I think just figuring that defense out, it's gonna take time. So I think for that reason, I think they score like 14. I think it's going to be right above 13.5.
Well, that's kind of why I set it at 13.5 because it was kind of like, okay, 2 touchdowns, a couple field goals. Where are you at on that? So I'm taking. This is kind of a spoiler alert, but I'm taking the under on the 13.5. It's okay. So hit me with your next one.
All right. So my next one is kind of an interesting one. It's going to be Nathan Carter rushing yards over under 70.
All right.
So kind of a little bit of an odd number, but we kind of get to see how that rushing attack plays out and who's going to get the majority of the carries, and maybe he breaks one for an 80-yarder and he just washes that away in the first drive, or maybe he doesn't get as many carries as Berger. So we'll see.
This is actually my third over under too, so we'll combine this into one. But
right.
I set the number at 99.5. So it was kind of like, is he going to get to 100 rushing yards or not? So for your number 70, I think I'm going to split the difference. I'm going to go under 99.5. So I don't think Carter gets to 100 rushing yards, but I'm going to go over 70 yards. I'll somewhere in the 80s, high 80s, I will put for Nathan Carter. So that's where I'm at with his run production. Interested to see again what the rotation looks like in the backfield. How many yards does Berger end up with? We got a question earlier about short yard situations. So I'll split the difference between our two, under 99.5, over 70.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it's gonna be between probably 75 to 90. I think, I can see Jalen Berger getting more carries and also getting more yards. I think the rushing attack, I expect them to combine for, over 150 yards and potentially 175 yards. I think they should really dominate, and it's just going to be up to them on what's going to happen.
All right, so since we kind of combined that one, go ahead and give me your next one, Aiden.
All right, so my last one is going to be Central Michigan total offensive yards over under 275.
275. Oh
So
man.
how are they gonna? I looked this up because I wanted to make sure. So last year, Western Michigan they had 193 yards passing and 141 yards rushing against MSU week one, which I don't know, do the math. That's over 300 yards. So kind of where that's about 320 yards. So kind of where is that, how do you grade Central this season versus, a Western team that people thought were going to be all right, but kind of were underwhelming as this season went on. So kind of where do we see that playing?
Yeah,
The
that's
over
an
under
interesting
275.
that is an interesting comparison because um Darius Snow and Xavier Henderson both get hurt in that game too, and so you're all of a
Mhm.
sudden it's week one and your two of your starters are knocked out of the game. I think in the second quarter. So how much did that translate? I'm sure it had an impact. 275. Ah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go slightly over 275 total yards. Uh, I don't feel good about it though. I do think Michigan State is going to be pretty solid against the run this year, especially early on when they're full health, full strength. So I'll say over 275, but slightly like under 300.
Under 300. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'll be the optimist and I'll take the under on this. I think, excuse me, like one of the people commented earlier about, they don't really expect Central's offense to carry the workload for them this year. They kind of expect their defense to be a little bit better. So I think I'll take the under for that sense. And just like you're saying, like a lot of guys got injured last season during the game. I think Jaden Mangum left early too with a concussion, if I remember that right. And so I think just if all those guys are healthy, obviously barring injury, I think I'd take the under on that.
That was a really good number that you chose because it's kind of like it's on that line of
Yeah.
less than 275 in modern college football is not a good offensive night. And but at the same time, Michigan State struggled in this category last year as far as like yards per game. They were one of ranked near the bottom of the Big Ten, so that was a good number by you. So, all right, that leads me to my next one, and it's Cal Halliday, who led Michigan State in tackles last year, and I think he as per tackles per game, I think he was right around 10. I think he led the Big Ten in tackles per game last year. So my question is, Cal Halliday over under 9.5 tackles, and I thought about setting that number a little bit higher, but we talked about the rotation that we kind of expect at linebacker, or at least I kind of expect a rotation at linebacker. So I didn't want to go over 10, so 9.5 tackles for Cal Halliday. Where are you at?
I think I'd have to take the under for that reason. I think Halliday could get to 8 or 9. I think depending on the score as well, that he might get pulled early if they're in a bit of a blowout. So I think just kind of all those factors, I would take the under there, but it's a close under at like 8 or 9.
Okay. Again, playing devil's advocate a little bit here. Not that I don't believe this, but it I like my number, but I'll go 10. I'll go 10 tackles for Cal Halliday. He just seems to have a nose for the football, and that's not like breaking news or anything like that. But he is a run stuffer. Um, Frankly, I haven't watched a whole lot of Central Michigan over the years, even since they got Jim McElwain. So I'm not sure like what they kind of prefer to do offensively, like how balanced they are, how much they sling it around, things like that. But it just seems like if there are tackles to be made, Cal Halliday's in there on them. So I'll go over at 10 for that. Um, are you finished with over unders? You don't have any more?
No, but I thought of one on the spot that's
Hit me
kind
with
of
it. Hit me with it
related.
because I have one
All
more.
right,
So hit me
so
with it.
we'll do this. So I'll just combine all of them. I'll say all the sophomore receivers. I'll say Jerron Glover, Antonio Gates Jr., Tyrell Henry. Those three guys. We'll say over under 100 just all-purpose yards because I think Tyrell Henry could be used for some jet sweeps and things like that. So I think we'll set the over under at 100 yards for all three of them.
Okay. I'll go over because I do think Henry is going to be the return specialist. So, and
Oh,
that's part of all
yeah,
purpose.
I didn't even think about that. I was just saying on offense specifically.
Okay, all right. So not all purpose then. Offensive yards.
Yeah, offense. Yeah, we'll do
Offensive
offensive
yards.
yards.
Okay. In that case, I'll go under because I do
Under.
think we talked about the who we kind of expect to be that trio of wide receivers. I do think Alante Brown, Montori Foster, Trey Mosley are going to get the most reps there. It kind of depends on how the game goes too, because if Michigan State gets out to a lead, we might see more of those younger guys in the fourth quarter. If it's like, I don't know, 30-3 or something like that, just throwing a number out there. So I can see how it's possible to get over 100, but I'll go under. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it don't again kind of like the Nathan Carter. It really only takes one play. I mean, if one of those guys gets a 50-yard gain, that's all. Then that's half the battle done already for you, and then you only need a couple more catches or whatnot to get to that 100. So I think I'd take the over. I think we'll see. I think one of those, maybe two of those guys will emerge as a key player on that offense as well. I think we'll see a lot of Jerron Glover. That I think we'll see a lot more of him than people expect. And then I think we'll see what Antonio Gates Jr. and kind of I think we'll see where his role is in terms of that. But I do think Henry and Glover are going to get a decent amount of playing time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with that, my last over under of the day, and pretty point blank here. Michigan State over under 3.5 sacks as a team, as the defense.
I take the over on that.
Okay.
I think they get to 4. I mean, obviously Jacoby Windman I think he had 4 by himself in week 1 last season before
Yeah.
kind of the rest of the injuries, and he wasn't able to play in that edge rusher role that he did starting last season. So I still think it's going to be over. I think Chris Bogle, we saw what he could do, as a pass rusher. I think just the rest of that group. I think Aaron Brule is a backup linebacker, but I think he's a solid pass rusher that will get in on the rotation. I think you know Simeon Barrow, Jalen, Sammy, they like I've said this before. I don't, they're not really guys who make the big plays, but they create the big plays where they create the pressure that, allows for guys like Windman and Bogle to make the sacks.
Yeah, to answer Eggplant's question quick here, just Chris Bogle is a guy expected to make that or be a starter on the edge. Zion Young, we've heard some good things about.
Mhm.
Maybe we see Bai Job out there in some specialist situations. That's probably, this is just kind of my instinct would be we might not see Bai Job in those situational plays unless it is second half and Michigan State's in control. But yeah, 3.5 sacks. I'll go over as well. I'll go 4. I'll go 4. I don't think it's going to be a bloodbath in the backfield
Yeah,
for Central, but
sure.
I do think I I was kind of, when I was doing this last one, I considered a Jacoby Windman setting that at point 0.5, like is he going to get one or not? So, but I would pick the over for that. I think he'll end up with 1. Interested to see how they use the linebackers as part of the pass rush and things like that. So I'll go 4 sacks for Michigan State. And so I'll join you on the over on that one. All right, and that's over under. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that segment. Like, it was fun to see you guys kind of play along in the comments as well. We're right at an hour here, so we've got two more. Should be pretty quick segments. It's place your bets, and that's like looking at the whole college football landscape, the best games this week, and then we'll get into our official Michigan State Central Michigan predictions. So we'll go through this pretty quickly. All right, best games of the week. Florida at Utah. This is on Thursday, day before Michigan State plays. Utah is a 6.5-point favorite at home over Florida. Florida beat Utah last year. Who wins this game? Who and who covers the spread, Aiden?
Yeah, I'm picking Utah and the points. I think Utah is a really good team. I have them in the Pac-12 championship this year, again for the third year in a row. So I really think Utah is they're just a tough team. They don't have the most talent, but when you play them that it's going to be a war, and there's going to be a lot of punches thrown back and forth, and they're not going to give up at the end. And I think last year there were a lot of different factors. I think Anthony Richardson was a big factor of why they won that game, and they Florida's breaking in Graham Mertz, who's a transfer from Wisconsin. So we'll see how that goes. And Utah also being home does play a huge factor. So I think Utah wins this one pretty handily.
All right, that is interesting because I've been kind of back and forth on this one, even going back several weeks. I'll go Utah to win, Florida to cover. I think it's a close game. I know Florida, I think, was 5-7 or something similar last year, but they did beat Utah last year. Now Anthony Richardson's not there. He kind of played hero ball in this game last season, so that dynamic is interesting with Graham Mertz, the Wisconsin quarterback, going down to Gainesville. But I'll take Florida to cover, Utah to win. Moving on. This one is kind of should be an interest to Michigan State fans. It's Boise State at number 10 Washington. Boise State is getting 14.5 points. So Washington's favored by 14.5. How do you see this one playing out, Aiden? And what does it mean briefly, like on looking ahead to that matchup with Michigan State?
Yeah, I mean, I think here I'm going to go Washington wins, but Boise covers. I think this is going to be, 14, 13-point game where Washington is in control and kind of in the driver's seat the whole time, but it doesn't get more than 2 possessions out of control. I think Boise, just as a program, has been solid, and, they haven't been as good as they were with I can't remember his name. Yeah, Chris Peterson. But I still think, they're solid, and they still have a decent amount of talent that, they can't compete at that high level that they used to be, but they can still compete. And I think Washington, offensively is, going to be hard to stop, but I think defensively will be the question for them.
No, I'm with you on this. I'm picking Washington to win the game. Boise State covers over in Seattle. We'll move on. This one is more just an intrigue for pretty much one person, but it's Colorado at TCU, and it's Deion Sanders' debut at Colorado. TCU is a whopping 20.5-point favorite here. So are you excited to see Deion Sanders on the sideline for the first time, Abe? Do you think you'll be able to watch this game, or is there any intrigue for you? Because there is some for me.
Yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of intrigue. I think for all MSU fans, I think there is a bit of an intrigue, obviously, since Mel Tucker came from Colorado. So I think in that sense, there is a little bit of intrigue in kind of how Coach Prime, transitions from, Jackson State to Colorado, and he brings a lot with him. He's bringing, Travis Hunter, and he got Cormani McLean, who's another 5-star out of high school ranks, and then Hunter obviously transferred in with him. He brings his quarterback, his son. So I'm intrigued by that, but I do think that TCU wins and covers. I think TCU really blows them out. I don't think TCU is going to be playoff level, but I think they're going to show what D1 football looks like. And I think Colorado really lacks the trenches. And I think that's somewhere where TCU made it a priority in the portal. I know they got two transfers out of Alabama in the portal, linemen, the Brockermeyer brothers. So I think that's something to look at, and I think TCU wins pretty handily and covers.
Boy, like going into the segment, I was on Colorado covering, but you almost convinced me there. But I'll stick with my original pick, and that's again TCU is going to win this game. But I am interested to see what their offense looks like without Max Duggan, who was a Heisman finalist last year,
Mhm.
without Garrett Riley, who I don't know if he won the Broyles Award, but I think he was a finalist. And he was one of the better assistant coaches. He's off to Clemson to try to fix their offense. So not sure what I'm going to get out of TCU this year. Sonny Dykes is a really good coach. I mean, you don't go year one at a new program and take him to the national championship without being a really good coach. So I do like him a lot. But this might just be I want Deion to succeed at Colorado just because I think it's a fun storyline. So maybe that's part of bleeding into it a little bit. But I'll take Colorado to cover, TCU to win. Moving on. North Carolina against South Carolina. I believe this is a neutral site game. North Carolina is favored by 2.5. So kind of quickly here, Aiden, what's your thoughts on this game and what's your pick?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the college game day game as well, so
Yep.
that's big. I actually am gonna pick South Carolina to cover and win.
Okay.
I'm picking them to win outright. I think that's a program that's been pretty good under the I can't remember the forgot the old Virginia Tech coach is his son. So
Shoot.
his name escapes me right now. It's
I know
so
I keep going
wild.
Spurrier, but that's not right. That's because he coached at South Carolina too. I can see his face. Help us out in the comment section. Who's the old Virginia Tech coach and his son is at
Yeah, Shane
South
Beamer.
Carolina?
Sorry, Shane
Shane
Beamer.
Beamer.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
But yeah, no,
Yeah.
Shane Beamer's really built a good program. I mean, Spencer Rattler has kind of come in and solidified himself. I know they have other weapons. I know DeCarrion Joyner's a good weapon for them on offense. So I really like them. I think Drake May is a good player for North Carolina, but I think he lost some weapons last season, and I think their defense lacks a lot of stuff, and I think the SEC kind of linemen going
Yeah.
against North Carolina doesn't really have the greatest O line either. So I think that's gonna put a lot of pressure on May. So I have South Carolina winning that one.
I'm with you. I'm taking South Carolina to win outright. And a lot of the same points that you made. SEC versus ACC. North Carolina's defense was dreadful last year. I think Spencer Rattler is going to be able to pick that defense apart at will. Drake May him and Caleb Williams are kind of like the favorites to be the first two quarterbacks taken in the draft next year, but that's a lot of pressure to put on your quarterback. I'll take South Carolina to cover and win outright. All right, moving on. Biggest game of the weekend. It's number 5 LSU against number 8 Florida State. This game is a neutral site game, but it's in Orlando, so a little bit of a home field advantage there for Florida State. LSU is favored by 2.5. Who do you got in this one, Aiden?
Yeah, I actually flipped it. So I actually am going to take Florida State to cover and win outright. So I think Florida State, just with their experience, Mike Norvell has really kind of built a program there, and I think Mike Norvell is a good person to look at to compare Mel Tucker to in terms of where they are on the hot seat, because I think a lot of Florida State fans really wanted him out and fired before last season because they came off of, I think, 2 or 3 years without making a bowl game. And then Travis Hunter flips to Jackson State right before the season starts. And then, everyone's calling for him to be fired. And then, Florida State goes out and wins 10 games. And I think that's something to look at for MSU, where some of these fans are really kind of getting antsy and kind of itching about is Tucker on the hot seat, and I think you need to give him just a little bit more time, and that's a good reference. But I think Florida State, just with their experience, I think they kept both of their coordinators too, which is huge. And I think LSU is just a little too young. I think Brian Kelly's a really good coach, and he's won everywhere he's been at down the line. But again, I think they're a little too young, and I think they're a year or two away from being kind of like an LSU power team that, everyone's known.
Yeah, I think there is from the perspective of we cover Michigan State. I'm definitely interested to see what Keon Coleman looks like, and
Right.
how
Yeah, that too.
he's
I didn't even
utilized
think
too.
about that.
Yeah, no, and I don't blame. Like I think Michigan State fans are so fed up with hearing about Keon Coleman and Peyton Thornton. I totally get it, but just from a college football perspective, just from somebody who's on the beat for Michigan State, I am intrigued to see what he or how he's utilized and how often he gets targeted, things like that. But I'm gonna go LSU. I'm gonna go LSU to cover the 2.5 points. I do think it's a tight game, but Florida State won this game last year. It was one of the wilder season openers last year. I think it came down to some kind of like botch kicking
Yeah,
thing
they
with
missed
special
that. They
teams.
got 2 extra points blocked.
Yeah, so
So
some special team stuff with LSU, and so I think they're probably chomping at the bit to get back at Florida State, and so I'll take LSU to win the game and cover the 2.5. Last one. This is going to be a Monday night game. And on its surface, you wouldn't think much about this game because it's football, but it's Clemson favored by 13 points at Duke. Again, this isn't a game that would normally jump out, but Duke won 9 games last year under head coach Mike Elko. He seems to have built a pretty good foundation there. So Clemson on the road, favored by 13. How do you see this one playing out?
yeah, I mean, I think, and a dark horse Heisman candidate is Riley Leonard, the quarterback for Duke. I think he's really good, and I think once people get to know him, he could. You talked earlier about Drake May and Caleb Williams. I think he can work his way into being one of the top QBs in the NFL draft next year. I think he's really that good, and like you said, Mike Elko is really kind of turned that program around in 1 year. I think that's going to be a game that Duke covers but loses. I think it's going to be, a 10 to 13 point game, but Clemson just has the talent advantage. Obviously, they got Garrett Riley as their offensive coordinator, which is something they really needed because they lost Tony Elliott, their former OC, to Virginia. So I think that's huge for them, but I think Clemson is still too much, and I think they assert their dominance and they're still, the team to beat in the ACC.
I'm with you on this one too. I'm going to pick Duke to cover, Clemson to win. I see about I'll say a 10-point win for Clemson here. Again, breaking a new offensive coordinator. I like Garrett Riley a lot. Interested to see what he does with Cade Klubnik. He was a super freshman last year who eventually earned the job over DJ Ungale. I probably butchered the name, but won the job. Interested to see what Garrett Riley does there. But it might take some time to iron out the kinks. So I'll take Clemson to win, Duke to cover. All right. With that, we get to it. Michigan State, Central Michigan. It's a 14-point spread on Caesars. Aiden, hit me with your score prediction. Well, first, kind of give me your condensed thoughts about the game, how you think it's going to play out, and then give me your score.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be that first quarter. I think that's gonna be the longest, probably just hour before kickoff. That's gonna be the longest hour for any Michigan State fan in a long time. I think everyone's gonna be waiting for that first drive and see who runs out there. I think just not only quarterback, but receivers, running back, tight end, everyone. I think everyone's really itching to see who it's going to be. And I think, again, I mean, when those directional schools like Central, Western, I know Eastern isn't, doesn't play Michigan or MSU anymore, but when those schools play against, the 2 big schools in Michigan, I think they do get fired up for it. And you do see that. And I think Central will come out pretty decent, but obviously I think MSU is, head and shoulders better than them. So I'm going to say, I think I said last year, I said like 34 13 and it was 34-17, or like vice versa.
You almost nailed it last year.
Yeah, I was pretty close. So I'm gonna go something very close. I'm gonna say 38-17 MSU. So I think they cover.
Okay, so Aiden's got Michigan State covering the spread. He's got them winning by 3 touchdowns, 38-17. All right. So as far as my general thought on the game, I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but I do think it's a run heavy game plan out of the chute for Michigan State. I think they protect the new starting quarterback, try to get him into a rhythm with some underneath throws. I don't think they're going to come out and just start slinging it. So heavily feature the 3-headed monster running back room in Nathan Carter, Jalen Berger, Jaron Mangum. We have the new clock rules, who are where the clock does not stop first downs until the last 2 minutes of the halves. So because of those factors, I think it's going to be a little bit of a shorter game. I do have Michigan State covering the spread, though. I got Michigan State 30, Central Michigan 13. So a 17-point win for the Spartans. That's my prediction. And so let's see. If I do the quick math here on the over-under, you're over the points total, which is at 45 or 45 and a half, depending on what sportsbook you look at. I'm under the point total at 43 points. So 30-13, that's my pick. Yeah, that's there was one question. I don't know if he's still around. Know Thyself gave us one question. I'm not going to ask for like a direct answer here, but like, what is the percentage? What is the percentage of a Central Michigan win on a scale of 100?
I would say, just based off of what Central was last season and how hungry this MSU team looks just to get out there and play and kind of prove themselves, I would say probably less than 5%.
I was thinking 3% was where I was at. So know thyself. If you're still in the comments, hopefully you stuck around this long. If not, well, that's why you stick around to the end. So 3%. So that's it. We'll see which one of us is closer to the final score on Friday night. Again, Aiden's got Michigan State 38, Central Michigan 17. I've got Michigan State 30, Central Michigan 13. So with that, it's been a long show. Appreciate you guys sticking around for well over an hour here with us, and we'll see you next time we talk to you guys live. It'll be after the season opener, so we're looking forward to that. Tentatively, we've got that scheduled for like a Sunday evening. So we'll see you guys then. Looking forward to it, and yeah, college football's here, and we can't wait. So see you guys later.